The poor, black and white, are still perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. What happens to a dream deferred? It leads to bewildering frustration and corroding bitterness.
What's up? Welcome to the Standing for Reason podcast with Mike and Alex. We are still not for the faint of thought, and this is our first episode of the new format where we're going to try to help people find ways to get involved and fight the good fight against Trump, a peaceful fight, a nonviolent fight, a legal fight, but a fight nonetheless. So what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm excited. We got this new format going. We're looking to crack down a little bit more, get a little more serious, call out some Democrats that are not behaving progressively.
We got a good one today, or I should say, you got a good one today.
Yeah, and then at the same time, like you said, our war is really with the other side, so we gotta, keep them honest and keep exposing what's going on over there. And I think it's pretty fitting that we start out this week on the week of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So
yeah, hence why that was the first thing you heard when you started up our podcast tonight. So yeah, we definitely it's not just about giving a shout out to Martin Luther King on the week of his birthday. It's not just about that. It's also about the as we were saying, a fight nonetheless. It's about the fight that's still happening, and it's not the typical, yes, black people and people of color are still going through a struggle of some kind. We can have that conversation at any time. But as we discussed earlier this week on the news portion of the show, it's still happening to the point to where somebody like Donald Trump tells someone like John Lewis that they're a man of no action. I mean, it's one thing to just talk about racism in the country and all that. That's all important. We should always do that. But I mean, later today, Mr. Trump gets sworn in, and a man that attacked a civil rights leader and hero on the week of the most famous leader and hero of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, that's definitely a dark day. But back to Martin Luther King. Me and you for this episode did a little bit of research into him, and we've done previous. But he's just an amazing man, and the courage that it took for him to stand for what he stood for, not just the civil rights movement, which obviously was what got him famous, but even after that, protesting the Vietnam War was a huge one. It was interesting to hear him talk about all the people that had supported him and cared about him and cheered him. And then once he started talking about Vietnam, those same people would write bad stories about him or, whatever. And just, it wasn't a popular thing to do. He brought up the point of we have our poor people who's mostly not that's not solely what the military is made of, but a good portion comes from working class, low income people. They go to the military, and in this case, they were bombing and blowing up poor people from Vietnam.
Right. And
he was just saying, morally, your conscience has to say, this is not right. Definitely, would encourage anybody to go back and listen to any of his speeches.
They're kind of intoxicating a bit. I mean, I listened to one that I'd never heard. I had heard the I Have a Dream speech. I've heard a few other things, but the one from the beginning of the show is from a speech. You can look it up on YouTube. There's several different postings of it. And it's called the Three Evils of Society or the Three Sicknesses of the Society. And the three evils are that he discusses is, he brings up racism, materialism, and militarism. And he brings us up about halfway through the speech, and then he goes through each of those. But I mean, the crazy part is that we can hear somebody can come out and say these words today, and if they were saying them for the first time, you wouldn't really have to change anything.
Yeah, I think
change the names a little bit, but that'd be about it.
Yeah, racism I think is a little broader now, maybe to like bigotry in general. You know, you have gay rights
Right.
and stuff. You can put a couple more things in there that are looked down upon like that. But yeah, it's basically if somebody were to give that speech today, I think most people probably having not heard it before would rally behind it and want to fight for that speaker.
Well, older Jewish man did come out and say quite a few of these things. And what I mean, one of the great things about Martin Luther King was, yes, he came to fame in a sense on the civil rights movement and fighting for, black rights and the Voting Act and stood in Selma, all that stuff. But he was also about the poor. I mean, one of the quotes from the same speech is, it's socialism when it comes to the rich, and it's capitalism for the poor. We're all told to stay in the rat race and fight, but and it's the same thing. There's memes and shit floating around right now about telling Congress, the Republicans in Congress, to get rid of their own health care before they start just repealing the healthcare plan for 20 million people. It's the same thing. They're going to be okay. It's socialism when you get into the government or when you're an elite. People are always throwing money at you. You always have access to money and opportunity. But for everybody else, if you don't have it, you're not working hard enough. And the whole, when you talk about Republicans, you always say the pull them up by the bootstrap shit. He says the exact same words, the exact same thing. So the things that people that are paying attention to what's going on, the points that we're making, it's just this guy's words really did stand the test of time. And what really sucks, the worst part about all of this, is you have this guy and you have JFK who played a part, and you have LBJ who played a part, and John Lewis, and even Malcolm X towards the end. You had all these people coming out that had the right idea, and that was in the 1960s. And we're still fucking here. Not only are we still here, we're now here with Donald Trump as our president.
And to the first part, one thing that he was trying to do at the end, they had already organized a Million Man March on Washington. Was have a poor man's march on Washington.
Nice.
And I think that is obviously something still relevant today that would send a sign to Congress. But on the second point, the fact that we're still fighting these things, part of that is due to our government and the way they kind of kept people like Martin Luther King Jr. and other great, speakers and people that were trying to unite the country. They saw them as a threat, basically.
Yeah,
and,
J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah. The letter that the FBI sent MLK, if you get a chance to read that, read it and just be in shock that this is something that our government sent Martin Luther King. Yeah, I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah, it is. It's don't upset the establishment. I've shouted this guy out a few times on this show, but I love his stuff. Bo Burnham has a song called "Straight White Male," and holy shit, it's so funny and real at the same time. And he ends one of his bits with, "We used to have all the money and land, and we still do, but it's not as fun now." And it's completely true. It's not fun because people are starting to understand. I think once again, I think there was a huge nap that a lot of people took. I think a lot of people were in this country at least, were very spoiled in the 90s. The threat that you had prior to that, just before that, was the Berlin Wall, but you had Khrushchev on the other side, who we've talked about. Khrushchev was the real hero of World War II. And so from the late 80s through 9/11 or 9/10 of 2001, I think a lot of people fell asleep. I think a lot of people took stuff for granted. That's when the liberal side was calling blacks in the ghetto super predators, and everybody was okay with that. So now, hopefully, Hopefully this is the awakening that we won't come back from. But you got anything else on Martin Luther King?
No, I think that's it. I just, like I said, encourage people to do some research for yourself and check out what the man really stood for, because it is a little bit different than what you learn in school.
Yeah, and the civil rights stuff is great. I don't want to take away from that, but I mean, this guy was all over the field when it came to issues that he fought. It really, racism was something that he fought, but it wasn't his only priority, and it did not matter if that issue affected blacks individually or not. If it was injustice, that guy was on it, and he's amazing to listen to. He's great. So anyway, speaking of people taking a stand, why is it that every time something great happens, once in a while it's California, but most of the time it's Washington? Like I told Lindsay after I was done reading the story, I'm like, I kind of want to move back. They're really getting progressive up there.
I think you've been pretty lucky living in Washington, Colorado, and California.
Hey, I had to do 9 months of hard time in Arizona, though.
that's true. But you pretty much hit the liberal jackpots, and they talked about getting California, Washington, and Oregon having its own country, Pacifica.
I'd move right back.
Just
I'd be on my way.
I mean, when you look at the laws being proposed in these three states, pretty much, and you look at the laws being proposed in Oklahoma.
Hey, well, let me get into the most recent good news coming out of Washington. So, just before I get into what's really going on, just to put it in context here, this is going to be regarding transgender people. Now, in 2016 saw the most murders of transgender people than any other year. There were 26. I know that's not a high number, but the number really shouldn't matter. What matters is that it was increasing. It was 26 last year, 21 in 2015. One is too many. That's just the bottom line. So I'm going to start the story off by talking about a Seattle PD officer named Tory Newbern, who is the first openly transsexual officer. I don't know if that's in the country or not, but definitely for the Seattle PD. And basically, this guy came out and told a few people in his police department, and now his police department ultimately knows, because the information I'm pulling this from, Vice did a really good episode on this, and you can actually check out video footage of their interview. But basically, this guy came out to a few of his closest friends and his partners at the police department and told them what was going on, and they're like, man, like, one of them is quoted as saying, I've known this guy for years. We've watched each other's back. We've had each other's lives in each other's hands. Like, to go back on that would make him a bad person. And that's the way that they're looking at it. So everybody's openly pretty much accepting what this guy came out with. I think he's definitely, it's a very heroic thing to do. But other than that, I mean, just to give two more shout outs to Seattle Police, they've started two different programs in the last few years. First off, they started the Safe Space program. And basically what that is, it's a really bright colored sticker. I think it actually might be a rainbow. I'm not sure. But it's a really bright colored sticker that law enforcement goes around to businesses and speaks to them and basically tells them, look, if you put the sticker in your window, if a transgender person has a problem or feels like they need to call 911, this sticker tells them that while they're waiting for us to arrive, they can wait safely in your store or in your establishment. There's no big secret that many people have some distrust with law enforcement. And in my opinion, Seattle, time and time again, is showing other law enforcement agencies how to take care of this. So they started the Safe Space program for LGBT people that are assaulted on the street or have something an emergency take place where they got to call the police. They now have several spaces around Seattle that they can go to and await law enforcement. And the next thing they did, this just makes sense. They started training their law enforcement officers how to deal with the LGBT community. Deal kind of sounds like a bad word, but how to relate and engage with them, how to communicate with them, what LGBT stands for, what the different types within those subcategories are, what certain members of that community like to be called, how do they like to be referred to, and basically it's not. I don't like sensitivity training. I don't like the thought of sensitivity training. This is more of a a training in how to communicate with members of the society that you're sworn to protect, which I think is fantastic.
I mean, like you said, it's really it's almost like a no-brainer, but nobody does it,
Right.
And whether it's LGBT, which that's probably a first, or minorities or whatever. I mean, that, like you said, that the trust issue is huge, and this just bridges the gap when you're able to go and be comfortable having a conversation with the people you're protecting. So yeah, shout out to Seattle PD.
Yeah. Once again, now Alex, before you get into your thing, one thing happened yesterday. I'm adding it to the notes. I'm just gonna say it, and then we can move on. Steve Harvey met with Donald Trump at Trump Tower. I think on Tuesday of this week. And when he was questioned about why he was there, he blamed the transition team for Obama. He blamed Obama's side of the transition team that said that they wanted him to meet with Trump to talk to him about how to reach out to inner cities.
Oh, fuck that guy.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be a few minutes with these buttons, player. He's fucking hilarious. The look on his face, dude, I'm telling you. Fucking funny. Anyway, go ahead. Move on.
Moving on, yeah. So, I guess first thing we got, just a quick shout out again to Mr. Bernie Sanders. We talked about him a little bit on the show, but
yeah, we don't really miss him much at all.
Yeah,
or the idea of him being in the Oval Office.
He's still out there doing work, man. That he's a monster.
And again, where's Hillary? Where is she? Anybody seen her? I can tell you we're going to see her later on today. Watching Trump get sworn in. At least that was the last report. But where the hell has Hillary been? I'm sorry, move on.
No, it's definitely a valid point. I mean, Bernie has been out there this past weekend doing rallies to save Obamacare, with the idea being, if he can get people at his rallies, but aside from that, the goal was to have people independently meet up and rally. And that sends a sign, in your district to your local congressman when 10,000 people get together and say, we're getting together because we don't want you to repeal Obamacare.
Yeah.
I mean, it sends a message, and that's really all we can do right now is get together, peacefully protest, and show our strength. So shout out to Bernie. Keep up. I'm sure you're going to keep up the good work, but
I hope Obama joins him. Like he said, not that he would join Bernie, but like he said that he would stay involved. I hope he joins him.
Yep. So next thing we got here, a little bit of the watchdog thing.
Yeah, you're roasting somebody.
Bernie Sanders actually co-sponsored a bill to help lower the prescription prices for Americans. What the bill would have done was make it legal for us to import drugs from Canada, or neighbor to the north. We have a good relationship. They never get into wars. Canada's, pretty good country. But some Republicans in the Senate voted for the bill. Actually, enough Republicans voted for it to pass. The problem was 13 Democrats voted against the bill, and it failed. The biggest, most notable one was Cory Booker, and he was just given a lot of praise this week for breaking tradition. I think he was the first senator to openly testify against the nomination of another senator. Sessions, yes.
Yeah.
So he went out there and argued, against his nomination, and then the next day voted no on a bill to decrease medicine. And when they asked him, why he voted that way, he said that it was because he cared about our safety, and he wasn't sure that we could be confident that the drugs we're importing are safe from Canada.
From Canada?
From Canada.
The side effects are going to make you what? Have a flappy head and be extra polite to people?
Bernie Sanders, he tells a story multiple times of how he took seniors over the border because Vermont is close, over the border to buy cheaper drugs in Canada. It's a normal kind of thing. There's 2 points, I guess. The first thing that came into my head was you guys in Congress just voted to take away the labeling of meat. Before you would have had to say where your meat came from.
Right.
If it was a foreign country. Now it doesn't matter. You know, you can get meat from any country that has any kind of animal problem or anything like that. Your meat doesn't need to be labeled. But we can't import drugs from Canada. Bernie made the argument about lettuce. We get produce from all over the world. We get meat from all over the world.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we be able to do this from Canada?
So we can import E. coli, just not the medicine to treat it. This reminds me of the whole silencer deal that you brought up earlier this week. We don't save lives. Just make sure if somebody's killed by a gun, that at least their ears still worked.
And the sad thing about this is Cory Booker's. I mean, the thing is he's a gifted speaker, and a lot of people, when you hear him speak, you think, man, this guy, he's the man. Look out for Cory Booker 2020.
I said that. That was when we had Nick on. That was the first episode of the year. I said that. Now I feel like an idiot.
Yeah, I think it's just, and that's what we're here for,
right,
with this part of the show.
Now here's the thing: we're not grilling Cory Booker because we have to assume that Cory may, and people in his position, may know a little bit more. I mean, we can sit here and talk about how Canadians aren't dropping dead over the medicine that they have, but is there let me ask: does he have any weird motivation as to why he would vote against this?
Well, I mean, the first thing when I looked it up, he gets money from Big Pharma. I think $267,000 up to now. But so I mean, obviously, that is an influencing matter. But the bigger deal is he's a senator from New Jersey, and New Jersey is very big in the pharmaceutical industry. They give lots of money in the area. They have jobs in the area. So after doing more research, it seemed like it was more to protect the potential jobs in his district. But I mean, when you're a progressive senator, everybody's eyes are on you. The whole country needs you, and we need cheaper medicine. I mean,
right.
That goes without saying. We pay the most in the whole world, and for you to think of some jobs in your district, or whether it was the money that was donated to you. I mean, just Republicans voted for this. That's just the bottom line.
It's disappointing, is what it is.
Definitely.
It's disappointing that we hold him. And I mean, you and I have been talking about him since this show began. I mean, it's not like he's brand new or anything, but I mean, he's been amazing on certain documentaries like 13th, and he was on a Vice episode about incarceration rates and recidivism rates and civil rights and all that. I mean, he's a great speaker. The first issue I had with Cory Booker is when he stood on the stage of the DNC and basically talked about why he was voting for Hillary Clinton after he had recently told a story where he experienced racism as a child due to segregated housing, when Bernie Sanders was arrested for protesting segregated housing. That was like the first issue that I have with Cory Booker. But this is unacceptable. This is not progressive at all. He's completely shutting down what the leaders of the progressive side of the Democratic Party are trying to do, and some Republicans. I mean, when you got some Republicans that are voting for free market to be extended outside of the United States, you're sitting on the wrong side of history. And those fucking donations the lobbying, all that bullshit that needs to fucking change in the Democratic Party, it's honestly going to lead to more death. It's going to lead to people. And Bernie's always talking about how older people are cutting their pills in half, or they're skipping them, or they're not buying them at all because it's either food, rent, or medicine. People are going to die as a result of this. I mean, of course you should look out for people in your district, but that's not what we're doing here.
Especially, with the repeal of Obamacare looming, it's like if there was any time for you to suck it up and tell your donors, sorry, I had to do what's right for the people, this is the time. So
exactly. And donors, fuck them. And Cory Booker, I mean, I'm not saying you can't work your way back into good graces, but as of right now, shame on you, man. You fucked up. Don't ever go against the goddamn Dean, the new family. That's just fucking. He needs to be held accountable. He honestly does. I mean, whenever you make a decision that is not in the best interest of what most people that are in not only your inner circle, but within the larger circles of people that tend to agree with you, it's not that you can't go against that, but if you ever do, and money can be shown as the reason for it, fuck him. Boot his ass. Anyway, so that's not what this entire show is about. Yes, we want to do the watchdog stuff. I think it's perfect that we're, we are not discriminating. You can be a Democrat, a Republican, an independent. We'll always shit on libertarians. That's just a must. But the thing is this is the top dog who most people think may run in 2020, and right now, fuck him. So, but it's not all about that. We don't want to basically just piss on all the bad stuff. We want to tell you guys, I heard this today, and I've heard it from so many people. Trump's being sworn in. Well, there's nothing we can do about it now. Yes, there is. Sitting around and saying there is nothing that can be done. No, there's nothing to be done about getting him sworn in today. Of course not.
The Second Amendment people. No,
yeah, or although our Second Amendment listeners know what we're talking about. Hey, watch us get indicted after he didn't. Yeah. And just so everybody knows, Alex and I are kind of way far to the left on the Second Amendment, and we are nonviolent. Anyway, there's our disclaimer. Anyway, so I heard people today, and I've heard people all throughout this whole thing. I don't do politics. What are we going to do about this? There's nothing we can do. All that bullshit. There are things we can do. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today has to do with the real reason why people have the collective power. It's always about money. We've said that from day one on this show. It's always about money. And collectively, where we put our money dictates our world. We are the dictator when we all come together and decide where we're going to put our money. So, let's start today with talking about a website that I just learned about last week called Just Capital. Just Capital is a website that takes corporations and gives them ratings on a bunch of different factors, like are the wages that they pay their employees competitive? Does their average employee salary, is that in line with their CEO salary? Is it comparable in any way? How are they on their benefit packages of their employees? Do they offer vacation and paid sick days? Everything that you can think of except for their profits is how all of these corporations are ranked. So let me just go over a few. And again, this is justcapital.com. Let's talk about Wells Fargo. So everybody remembers recently Wells Fargo created like 2 million fake accounts and affected we did the math and we split it up and it came out to about 750,000 customers possibly. We just recently talked about Wells Fargo. They are below average on providing living wages to their employees. They are given a 0 for are the employees paid fairly compared to the CEO? 0. Not to mention, what's that guy's name? Strumpf? The one that Elizabeth Warren took in front of everybody and bent her over his leg or her leg and just paddled the shit out of him. That guy.
I'm trying to remember. I mean,
something Strumpf.
It was Strumpf, but his severance package, he at least
200. I think 200 mil? Or is that what the woman got paid? The one that was initially in charge that retired that they brought back and gave like a performance excellence award or some shit.
I think he got something like that. He ended up giving a little bit back, but still, I mean, when you think about it,
Still ridiculous, right?
50 million, right? How many daytime employees does it take to add up to the $50 million bonus?
Well, I mean, yeah. How many employees work for that company that will never see what this guy saw to walk away? Again, socialism for the rich, capitalism for the poor. One day, maybe we'll all work hard enough so we can be CEOs, and when we fuck over the world and our customers, maybe we can walk away with $200 million. That's what we should also strive for, right? That's what they mean by bootstraps. Anyway, so they're rated a 0 on that when it comes to comparing their workers' salary compared to their CEO, and they are way below average on customer treatment. Give everybody one guess as to why. And so what do? Wells Fargo's huge. Again, hashtag forgo Fargo. That's what I came up with. That's what we should be hashtagging. Anyway, what should we do? Use your local credit unions. They are not huge. They are not too big to fail. They fail without you, so they need you. Go to your credit unions.
Yeah.
Say what?
No shareholders.
No shareholders.
People to impress. They're there for you.
Lower rates, lower tickets on Disneyland for everybody that lives, and Universal Studios for those that live in California and Florida. I mean, there's benefits to doing that. One of them being they're not going to create fake accounts and give you fake fucking charges. It's not that it can't happen. It's just that it hasn't happened. So one other company that rated high, I was surprised, on this website, Just Capital, was Bank of America. I don't have any dirt on Bank of America other than everybody I've ever known that's used Bank of America has a horror story about charges from Bank of America. So, again, use your credit union, but if you need a national bank because you travel or whatever, according to this site, you're safest with Bank of America.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, where you spend your money is really, at the end of the day, that's your power.
Right.
And it's hard. I mean, I know personally how it feels to be too broke not to shop at Walmart. I mean,
yeah.
I don't want to shop there, but then you go somewhere else and you spend $3 more per item or something, and at the end of the day, hey, you got to do what you got to do. But if you can, look at websites like this, Just Capital, and things like this, and try to spend your money locally instead of on the big box stores. And I mean, really, that's the power that we have, that and us organizing. So, think about what you're doing, and it's a pretty cool website.
It is, and people aren't going to listen to your voice. They're not going to. All of these demonstrations and everything, what that does, in my opinion, from what we've seen so far, that doesn't do anything to them being the people that we are protesting and organizing against. What that does is something for us. That tells us, holy shit, we are not alone. Look at all these people. The only time these people start to listen is when you hit them in the fucking wallet. That's it. That's what it takes. It's always been that way. And I can't think of one time where it hasn't been that way. Voices don't get heard. The only people that hear your voice are the people that are saying the same shit you are. That's it. And that's great. That's a great thing. I'm not saying don't organize. Organizing gets people educated. It gets people involved. We need that. But what we need to do once we get those people is be very, very religious, in a sense, on where we spend our money. And that does not mean give your money to a fucking church. That's not what I'm saying. We need to have very strict principles on where we spend our money. Like, stop buying fucking diamonds, for fuck's sake. Quit buying diamonds. They are cheap, they are common, and you are contributing to millions of deaths. Millions! No joke. Anyway, let me see here. I did some other research here. So, I found 3 companies. By the way, I looked for Walmart. They're not on there. They don't even rank in their top 100. Walmart's not even on there. Anyway, a few places that are. Now, these are top-ranked companies. If you fly, I always did this even before. Southwest. Southwest is awesome. They have the shortest waits when it comes to push-off and landing. Their their customer service is outstanding. I've had issues on Southwest flights. I've never had an issue solving that issue. I have flown a lot, and honestly, like Southwest to me personally hasn't been bad, but they have the top rank for the bigger airlines that were on this site. Another one that got really top high scores is Google. We actually had a guy on the show that we interviewed about spirituality about a year ago that works for Google now. Loving it, treating their employees well. That's great. And CarMax. Don't go wheel and deal with car dealerships. Go to CarMax. CarMax doesn't wheel and deal. They're also not on commission. Their employees are paid a salary regardless of what they sell or don't sell. So those are 3 companies from 3 different categories that got really high remarks on this site. So again, that is justcapital.com. What else you got, Alex?
That's it, man. We're actually 35 minutes into it. So
35 minutes into it. All right, so we got to end it right here. So, and also, if there's anything else that you guys, if you guys are looking to get involved in anything, like Just Capital is a way for you to personally try to make an impact. If you want to do the organizing and all that other good stuff, subscribe and like them on Facebook. Go to moveon.org. They're awesome. You'll hear from Cory Booker's on there quite a bit, and we just took a piss all over him because he just pissed on the people. But
hey, this is not the time. This is not the week to be talking about politicians getting pissed on.
Oh yeah, actually, yes, it is. Maybe we can get Russian hookers to piss on Cory Booker. Anyway, Just Capital is something you can do personally. When it comes to the organizing and all that, MoveOn.org is huge. And not only will you hear from Cory Booker, and what you do hear from him is good. You'll hear a lot from Bernie. You'll hear a lot from Elizabeth Warren and other progressives from the Democratic Party. And I just want to say to everybody that's marching, the women's march that's happening all over the country. I know Black Lives Matter is working on some stuff. Please stay civil and be safe. If you guys see anybody about to fuck with you, there are websites with guidelines on how to handle yourself when a demonstration starts to look like it's going to turn ugly. Do not think that this sleeping giant that Trump was able to awaken that got him elected is not going to be on the lookout for everything that's going on, and that they may not try to counter protest. Please just be safe. So good luck to everybody. We will see you guys on, probably Monday we'll return with our new show. So that's been Mike and Alex, where we are not for the faint of thought on AOR Podcast. Check us out on AORpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at AOR_podcast. And for other stuff, the Facebook, the Age of Reason page on Facebook. So take care, everybody. Please be safe. We'll see you next time.